She smiled in my face, helped me with groceries, and called me sis. But the entire time, she was secretly texting my husband, and I found every single message. I never imagined that the person who smiled at me the most in the hallway was actually the reason my marriage almost ended. When we moved into the building, I was in one of those moments where everything seemed to fall into place. New apartment, new phase. Trying to leave the past behind and build a more relaxed life with my husband. The routine was simple: work, home, grocery shopping, and the occasional glass of wine in the evening. Nothing too hectic, but the kind of tranquility I always wanted. It was on the second or third day that I met her. The wife of the neighbor from 404. Beautiful, well-dressed, friendly, one of those women who speaks looking you straight in the eye, with a constant smile on her lips and a voice that was always too sweet. She sounded like something out of a margarine commercial. She was the first to welcome us. She knocked on the door with a box of cookies, saying she loved it when new couples arrived. We laughed, thanked her, exchanged a few compliments, and from then on, she became a constant presence. At first, I confess, it was good. I'm a bit reserved, so having someone to talk about the neighborhood, swap recipes, and vent about every day. Life felt lighthearted. She always had a funny story to tell, a sarcastic comment, a relaxed manner that made me laugh. We started having coffee together once a week. Then, almost every day. We exchanged WhatsApp messages, stickers, funny videos. She called me sis, dear friend, and said we were neighborhood soulmates, and I fell for it. I started to trust her. I shared details of my routine. I was talking about my fears, my insecurities, and the difficult times I went through at the beginning of my marriage. She always listened attentively, sometimes even too much so, and offered advice with that "I know exactly what you're going through" tone. She was almost always kind. But, looking back, there were awkward moments. Little things that didn't bother me at the time, but now make perfect sense. She asked a lot about my husband, too much. Things like, was he always this quiet? And do you two still go out to dinner? How lucky, you know? Wow, he seems so attentive. It's hard to find a man like that these days. Silly. I would smile and respond proudly. I thought she admired our relationship. But now I realize with studying the dynamics, she started showing up at the same times he was home. She would bring cake, lend books, ask for a quick favor. She would offer to help with the groceries when she saw I was alone, and when my husband opened the door. She would quickly strike up a conversation. She complimented his shirt, his hair, even his quiet demeanor. She'd say, "Your husband has that quiet, charming type, you know?" At the time, it seemed innocent. I even laughed, but it kept lingering in my head. Little by little, she began to make her presence felt. She wasn't just a friendly neighbor anymore. She was a constant shadow, knowing when I was home, when I left, when I returned, and worst of all, she never let much of her life slip. It was as if our entire relationship was built on my openness and her curiosity. I talked, she listened. I exposed myself, she absorbed. And always with a smile on her face. I remember one specific day that stuck with me. We were having coffee on the balcony of her apartment, and she said something that, at the time, went unnoticed. But today, it echoes within me like an ignored warning. You know, if I had a husband like yours, I would do everything differently. At the time, I thought she was talking about her routine, her way, but the phrase was more loaded than it seemed. It was a seed, a provocation. And I, distracted by the fake friendship, didn't understand. And it was in this climate of friends, with benefits of poison, that the thing grew. It became part of my daily life, but I still didn't know that. Behind the laughter, something was being built behind my back. The truth would only come later, and it would come where masks always fall, in messages. If there's one thing betrayal teaches you, it's that it almost never comes with a shout. It comes subtly. It comes in the form of a joke, a disguised compliment, in glances that last a second longer than they should. It comes in the form of a friendship that only approaches when you turn your back, and that's how my story began to crack. After months of believing I'd found a true friend, I started noticing little things, the ones we feel before we see them, the kind of intuition you try to ignore because you'd rather keep the peace than face discomfort. She started making too many comments about my husband, like, he always comes home from work smelling nice, doesn't he? Have you noticed how calm he is? He gives you a sense of security. Don't let him get away, you know? A man like that is rare. I always responded with uncomfortable laughter. I thought they were just harmless compliments, but inside, something told me she was observing too much. I started to notice that she only knocked on my door when he was home, even though she knew I was alone during the day. She'd show up at night with any excuse, asking for sugar, showing me a meme on her phone, returning a glass, and whenever he opened the door, her eyes would sparkle. The final straw in this phase came one afternoon when we were all at the condominium pool. Me, her, my husband, and a few neighbors. We were sitting around chatting when she blurted out of nowhere, "You should wear tank tops more, so on so. It makes you look better." I laughed, but I felt my blood rush. She said it like she didn't mean anything. But who says that to a married man? In front of his wife. Worse, he was embarrassed. She. Not at all. That night, I started observing more closely. I noticed my husband was disconcerted when she texted, yes. Texts, she added me to a WhatsApp group for residents. And soon after, started sending private messages. She sent links, videos, and always started talking to him too. All harmless, course, but constant, too much so. And then he started to change. He started leaving the room when his phone rang, locking his phone with a password, smiling to himself, then saying, "It's nonsense. Group stuff." One night, I noticed he was typing quickly, almost smiling, and when I got closer, he froze. You turned off the screen. You changed the subject. At that moment, the click came. Something was wrong. Something was hidden. And worst of all, she was part of it. I tried to talk to him. He said he was feeling a little uncomfortable with his neighbor's proximity. I asked if she was saying something out of place. He denied it. He said it was just my imagination, that she was just nice. But the way he looked away when he spoke, it killed me inside. From then on, I began to observe in silence. And when you start to truly observe, everything changes. I saw that she was always one step ahead, that she knew his schedule better than I did. She knew when he left, when he returned, when he was alone. She knew more than a neighbor would, and me. I didn't want to accept it, because accepting that a friend, a woman who sat at my table, drank coffee with me, laughed with me, talked about life, could be crossing that line behind my back. Was too painful. But the truth is, the signs were all there. I just didn't want to see them. And when I finally opened my eyes, I saw more than I expected. I saw evidence, messages, words, insinuations, and, fortunately, I saw his answers. Asterisk. I hadn't slept well in days. That anguish in my chest, that feeling that something was wrong, that everything I felt wasn't paranoia, it was intuition. And yet, I tried to run from it, 'cause the pain of imagining is great. But the pain of confirming, it's devastating. It was one of those early mornings, one of those when we toss and turn in bed, trying to escape our thoughts. That had happened. He had fallen asleep on the couch with his phone in his hand. The screen flashed. A message notification. It was her, the neighbor's wife, the woman who called me sis. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my throat. I looked. I didn't want to, but I looked. Maybe on impulse, maybe out of desperation, and there they were. The messages exchanged. For weeks. Private messages. Conversations that began with lol and ended with whispered compliments between emojis. She would send messages late at night, like, "She must be asleep by now, right? I bet she doesn't even notice when you're awake alone." Another, "If I had a man like you, I'd never let him feel this way. And the worst of all, if you ever want to talk, or more than that, ... you know where to find me." And he would respond, not with complete reciprocity, but hesitantly, with giggles, with phrases like, "You're crazy, huh? You're no good, lol. Don't say that. You'll end up getting the worst of it." But what hurt wasn't just the content, it was the tone. It was the fact that he hadn't said, "Respect me. I have a wife. Don't send me that anymore." No, he let it happen. He fed it with each swipe of my finger. My world crumbled. It was as if each message was a silent stab, a piece of ground disappearing beneath my feet. My hand trembled, my face burned, my stomach churned. It was as if the woman I called a friend had slapped me, but smiling, I went back to the bedroom. I sat on the edge of the bed, and I cried quietly, so as not to wake anyone, but with a pain that screamed inside me. The next morning, he woke up as if nothing had happened. He made coffee. He called me with a kiss on the forehead. Hypocrisy. I waited for him to leave for work. I sat down again. I calmly opened the conversations. Screenshot by screenshot, each message saved. Like a witness to a disgusting theater. And then with cold hands, I opened the friend's WhatsApp. I went through our chat history. She kept sending me memes, loving messages, pretending to be my confidant. Just the night before, she had sent me, "Friend, let's get together for wine this week. I miss our honest conversations." Honest conversations while she planned to cheat on me. Behind my back, that's when I understood it wasn't just about him, it was about her. She pretended to care. You pretended to listen to me. You pretended to empathize. And all of this, for what? To get closer to him, to feel powerful, to feed on the trust I gave her. It was like being betrayed twice, by the man I loved and by the woman I trusted. I spent the day in silence, but inside, something had changed. The naivety died, the patience ended, the love turned to shards. And that very day, I decided I would face them both, without shouting, without scandal, with proof, with firmness, with pain in my soul. And my head held high, because if there's one thing betrayal can't handle, ... it's being exposed. Asterisk, asterisk, that night, I couldn't smile anymore. I couldn't pretend. I sat with him in the living room, stared into the eyes that had once given me security, and with a firm voice, but trembling inside, I asked, "Do you have something to tell me about our neighbor?" He tried to laugh. He looked away. "You said I was imagining things, that I was exaggerating." But before he could even finish the sentence, I placed my phone on the table. The screen lit up. The messages opened. One by one. The silence that followed was the loudest that had ever existed between us. He ran his hand over the back of his neck, turned pale, tried to say it was just a joke, that nothing physical had ever happened, that it was just talk, that it meant nothing, nothing, he said, as if the trust I'd placed in him for years had some measurable value, as if every word written behind his back wasn't a stab in the back. As if talking to another woman while he lay beside me every night was ... harmless. I didn't scream. I didn't cry in front of him. I didn't break anything. Because at that moment, the pain was so great that the only possible reaction was silence. The kind of silence that carries disappointment, the end, the embarrassment of others. And it was. In that silence that I stood up, took a deep breath, and said, "You chose the path. Now I choose the door." But she was still missing, the neighbor. The one who feigned friendship, who called me sis, who sat at my desk, who praised my relationship just to feed off it. The next day, I went up to her apartment. I knocked on the door. She opened it with that ready smile, but it died halfway when she saw my face. I didn't give her time to say anything. I showed her my phone. The messages? I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "You pretended to be my friend. And while you smiled at me, you were throwing yourself into my husband's arms." Oh, she tried to laugh nervously. He said it was all a joke, that I was exaggerating, that he was the one answering, that it was no big deal. That phrase again, no big deal, as if smiling behind a woman's back, gaining her trust, entering the privacy of her home, and flirting with her husband were a small thing. I didn't need to say anything else. I just left my phone there, on the screen with the messages displayed, and turned my back. Because the shame was now hers. In the days that followed, I distanced myself from both of them. From him, physically, from her, emotionally and socially, and from myself, just for a while. Because when we experience double betrayal from a partner and a friend, it's as if our soul is shattered. But every piece that remained within me, I put back together, calmly, with therapy, with support, and, above all, with self-love. The pain was great, but the lesson was greater. Today, when I think about this story, I no longer feel anger. I feel strength, because I had the courage to face what many women prefer to ignore. I valued myself at the moment they devalued me most. I rebuilt. Alone, everything they tried to dismantle. And you know what? I never again accepted smiles in person from those who resonate with my pain behind their backs. Because trust isn't restored with apologies, and love doesn't survive where cowardice dwells.